I try to live my life like I'm going to live another 100 years and like I'm going to die tomorrow at the same time. The idea of retirement is one of the, if not the most long game-y type of concepts that people are getting behind. And I'm challenging that and saying that I think it's a really bad idea. We're seeing like this unretirement movement where 30% plus of people that have retired are saying like, wait a minute, this is not what I was told it was going to be. And they're going back to work.
We're here. You're here. Derek, I'm so glad that you're a part of the show. It's going to be a great episode, no doubt. And for you tuning in, I hope you're excited to hear what Derek has to share. I think philosophically, you and I are aligned on a lot of things, including having a little bit of fun along the way and not just overworking. So I heard you're a big My Morning Jacket fan. And if I remember correctly, there was a concert in Denver at Red Rocks this weekend.
Yeah, man. What's up, Aaron? Good to be here, dude. Yeah, man. It was 2 concerts in Red Rocks. And in fact, another band that I had previously not seen before, Mount Joy, was there the Thursday night. So my wife and I went out to Denver, Red Rocks area, did 3 nights there. Our first time to Red Rocks was in 2011 to see My Morning Jacket. And I don't know what took us so long to get back. But yeah, we saw them 2 more times this past weekend. It was amazing.
Red Rocks is a pretty special venue. I had a client that went to that exact show on Saturday night after we did a one-on-one day, all day Friday. And every time I go to Red Rocks, it's a different way to do concerts. I think it's the most special place I've ever seen music. And I heard that night there was like lightning and all kinds of really cool things atmospherically that probably made it really special.
Yeah, it was cool. You know, like there are a lot of amphitheaters that, you know, I'm a big live music guy just because I love it. And it's also really good for you. There's a lot of known researched health benefits and like, you know, even going as far as showing that you can extend your life by attending concerts on a pretty regular basis. And so I'm pretty well versed. I've been to a lot of shows. I go to a lot of shows. It's a big part of my life. And there's a lot of amphitheaters that like, it's a little smaller or the view is better. But what makes Red Rocks so good is the view for the artists and the band. They're looking up and they're seeing, you know, the view that they're seeing is what is, I think, like allowing them to level up their game and inspire them and allow them to maybe play a little bit differently than they would when their view is not nearly quite as good.
Yeah, it's immersive, I think, for everybody. And having the rocks around you is certainly special.
Yeah, man.
You know, this idea of fun might be a great place for us to start today. So for those of you listening, I would highly recommend you check this book out, Let's Retire Retirement. Derek published this, and philosophically, you and I think, are dialing the same direction where we're essentially combating this, like, I'll enjoy life later. Where did you start to notice that was a problem? Because I see it pervasively in entrepreneurs, but I'm sure you saw it as a financial advisor that did that for a lot of years and crushed it. You probably also saw it out of the entrepreneur community, I'm guessing.
Yep. Yeah, man. So look, I've been a financial advisor for 27 years and everyone in that industry just kind of automatically buys into this concept, which is barely over 100 years old. This idea that we're supposed to do work that we don't necessarily enjoy or love, and we should be working as hard as we can to stop doing it as soon as possible to earn the right to sit around and not do anything at all for 20 or 30 years after that. And what we're seeing like this unretirement movement where 30% plus of people that have retired are saying like, wait a minute, this is not what I was told it was going to be. And they're going back to work, you know? So and not because they need the money, but because they missed the contribution, they missed the connection. And so just the idea of agreeing to go along with the idea of retirement typically is correlated with the idea of sacrificing your health, your happiness, your relationships, your fun, in the name of saving up a certain amount of money by a certain age. And, you know, we're seeing that a lot of people are not happy when they're getting there. And I have always just sort of gone against that and tried to work with my clients. And now through this book, you know, a much larger audience, try to help them realize that you're probably going to work longer than you think. And if we start planning for you to have some income coming in later in life, that means you don't have to save as much right now. And then that means you all of a sudden have more money and more time that you get to spend on the people and things that are most important to you right now.
I like that. Finding an edge that allows you to do more now and sort of prep for the future. I find it fascinating this general subject with entrepreneurs because even though you could argue that entrepreneurs are enjoying their work a bit more, I would say that the entrepreneurial lie is still the same lie, right? They're still playing the same game, but you're playing to exit sooner. So this loud conversation seems to be like, build a business, sell it, and then you'll never have to work again. And not only does that feel incredibly empty, but we know that when you retire like that, if you have no direction, no purpose, nothing to do during the day, like most entrepreneurs would like wither away. They would just lose themselves in devices, right? Specifically.
For sure, man. Look, yeah, I mean, I think there's a chapter in my book called Happiness versus Meaning. And one of the things I highlight is a study that was done that broke people into two categories. Category one were a group of people who were prioritizing personal happiness. They were waking up every day, solving for how can I be happy today? Group two was solving for meaning and purpose. They were here because they were hoping to make a bigger difference on others, on the world, just beyond themselves. And the health benefits were staggering. Group one that was focused on themselves, they hooked everybody up to brain and heart monitors, and their inflammation levels went up. Their body had the same response that it has when it's dealing with a chronic adversity. So like the loss of a loved one or the loss of a job, it was incredibly unhealthy. They were more likely to get sick and get diseases and die. Group two, they didn't have that at all. It was the opposite. They were the inflammation was lower. They were much healthier, and they were happier. Right. So in a weird sort of way, one of the takeaways from the study is that if you really want to be happy, don't directly pursue happiness.
Right. I like that idea. I feel like my world is incredibly centered on meaning and contribution, and there is a interesting loop there because I feel motivated, I feel connected, I feel inspired, and some days that sucks, right? Because putting contribution first often means deferring your own joy, right? If you're really contributing, sounds like you've got a really good handle on contribution as a means to make sure it powers your whole life and connects back to happiness, but also taking care of yourself. Like, how'd you figure out that formula? What do you think someone that's go-getting can do to maybe weave in a little bit more of that? And then how do you balance contribution and fun?
Yeah. So let's double click on what you said about feeling drained when you're, or whatever language you used, like when you're giving to others and not, giving to yourself. So I am almost a month removed from having an emergency appendectomy. And then I also had a hernia get repaired while I was out. So I have not been able to work out for a month. Once I hit the 2-week mark, that's the longest that I'd gone without working out since high school. Right. And I was like very like down, mentally it was really affecting me and just in a bit of a funk. And like it's my primary way of dealing with stress. Right. And is moving my body and getting exercise, but when I was having phone calls with people where I was being of service to them, I was helping them work through something. I was like, that was when I felt the best. And so I would maybe push back a little bit to say that like, maybe like when we're feeling drained or strained or feeling like we're working on doing something else and we're doing like activities that we are not best suited to do, or we're doing parts of the job that we don't necessarily love doing. But I think that in my own experience, and I think this is well documented, that when we really are in a space where we're helping someone out a lot or little, like that's going to make us feel, I think, much better inside. And that's been my experience like the past month or so.
So how do you make sure that you're also having fun? Is it scheduled, structured? Is it built into KPIs? Like, I know you're dialed here.
Yeah, man. I think, when I say that I think we're in the midst of a fun recession right now. And I think that 99% of adults are not coming close to having an appropriate amount of fun. When I do like when I've done an informal poll over the past 5 years and I ask parents at soccer games and different business events, when was the last time you had fun? I almost always get met with a pause. They have to think about it. And it's usually something like, oh, we had dinner with another couple a month and a half ago. Right. And it's like a conversation, and dinners with other couples are great, but I think that we could be doing more to have a better time. And I think that having fun, getting out is going to allow us to return to our work, to our role as a parent, to our role as a spouse or significant other, and allow us to be even better than we were before we went. But I don't. I also don't want people to feel like they have to have a reason for having fun. Like I right now am feeling incredible coming back from like seeing 3 shows. I mean, every single night I sat there just 5 minutes before the band came out, and I was like, I can't believe that I'm sitting here getting ready to do this right now. And I turned to my wife and I said, the last night or two, we've had more fun than probably most adults are going to have for the rest of their lives, and we're going to do it again tomorrow night. So I just like I'm not trying to shame anybody here, but I really really want people to remember, if they have forgotten, that we're supposed to be enjoying this thing, I think, a little bit more than we are. And there are very specific things that we can do, I think, to lean into to having fun. And again, making the time for it, carving out time for it, I think it's going to allow us to show up, even though we might be working less hours, right? We're showing up at work and we're more creative. We're getting more done. We're thinking differently about things because our body, our mind, our soul had a chance to be a little free and enjoy life a little bit.
I really want to stay here for a moment because I think entrepreneurs struggle with this a lot. And I struggle with this. So way back, I went on a couple dates with a woman and I asked her a question like, hey, how would you describe me to a friend? I love asking these kind of questions. And I was reading this actually yesterday because I was scrolling through old notes and kind of deleting things. And her answer, it sort of encapsulates what has been my challenge. Her answer was, I haven't met anyone quite so serious in a long time. Serious not because he's boring, but because he's been handed certain things in life that require intent. And there's a couple more pieces of that, but I reflected on that, and that comment, while endearing, and I took it really positively, definitely spoke to me in a way that I needed to revisit why I've been so serious. And it prompted me to take a little bit of time to think about, well, what do I do for fun? I've always played soccer. Like, okay, I play that. But then I started digging a little deeper. And I think my life being really enmeshed with business and entrepreneurship, and then life being worked into that, I certainly set aside really good rhythms of like reflection and health. And I love working out and I love running. But then it came time to like play. And it has been a real challenge to think about what play looks like now. Right? It I think can be it's unstructured, but everything I do becomes so dialed that play also can feel like I'm forcing it. And I just love your perspective on what like go-getters can do to create play. You've got music, but how can we think about play and enjoyment and fun if we're so dialed in all the time and we're like trying to get out of this box? You got any tips for us or for me?
Hey, look, so just to go back to my purpose versus happiness, right? Comments from earlier. I think that one of the main reasons why people are more likely to get sick, get diseases, and die once they lose purpose is I think there's a biology component, right? It's you're not looking to contribute to make this world a better place anymore. So we're not going to go out of our way to keep you around. And I think that there's probably an element of, with our minds, our bodies, our souls, where like what if they're just rebelling against us when we want to work and be serious all the time? What if they're saying like, you never show us a good time, so we're not going to fall in line for you right now when you need us to work and get stuff done? We weren't meant to just work all of the time. There's a term called collective effervescence, which I heard, which I saw Adam Grant shared like a week after I was done with the final edits for my book. I talk about it in my book, but I didn't use the term. Collective effervescence are the conditions that are needed that will allow us to have the most amount of joy, while we're in these human suits. And the two primary components for collective effervescence are, one, being in a flow state, and two, having a shared energy with a whole lot of other people. So when I'm at a concert and there are 5,000 people singing a lyric that they've all sung out their car window, you know, 100 other times, and we're it's hitting at the same time for all of us, right? Like that is just going to produce a different type of feeling than going to a wine tasting event. And I don't mind wine tasting events, and I like wine tasting events perfectly fine. But I've been able to suggest, and I mentioned this in the book, that I think that concerts and stand up comedy are the two best ways that we can access fun. By the definition of collective effervescence, some people would say sporting events. Well, the problem with sporting events is there's probably a 50% chance that you're going to be unhappy, at the end of the night. I never have to worry about like my favorite guitar player going 0 for 9 from the 3-point range, when I'm at a show. So um, I'm very likely to be super happy at the end. I'll tell you another thing. We were at a concert, a band called Goose. They're this really fun up and coming band, and they have an annual event called Goosemas, and it's a bunch of adults that get dressed up in costumes, and they're running around, and at least half the people there are probably on some kind of substance to enhance their experience. And the first time we went, we saw all these like little kids running around, and we're thinking, first, I'm thinking like, as a parent, I'm being a little judgy, right? Like, I can't believe that they have their kids here. Like, I wonder what they're thinking. And then I'm like, wait a minute, my kids are probably at home on their iPad right now playing video games. Their kids are out on a Friday night dancing, singing along to great music. And I think back like 5-10 years ago where, I look at the people that go to a bunch of concerts and follow like the bands around as like the dregs of society. Like, look at these people not contributing. They're just going around and listening to music all the time. And I think that there's a lot of them looking at us to say, look at these idiots, man. Like we're going around listening to live music 40, 50 times a year, and they're worried about their culture and their their EBITDA and I don't think that, I think that balance is what I want to preach here. I don't want to preach one extreme or the other, but I think, to your point, a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of people are just too focused on playing the money game, and they're not focused on all of the other things that this life has to offer.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's super well said. I have had to think about this more and more as a dad. And I know you've got 2 boys, yeah?
Yep, 15 and 13.
Yeah. And so my son's 3. And, this journey of prioritizing him and making these experiences happen. Like one day I took him to like the biggest Arizona construction companies, like land lot with all their equipment. And all we did was like walk around, right? But it was a small thing that felt like a meaningful experience. And I've tried to track that down to KPIs. And as I do this more, and I want to get your insight on this, because I know you do such a good job of it. As I do it more, what it forces me to do as a business owner and as somebody driven is to get out of my comfort zone and maybe delegate, maybe build a system so I can get an extra hour, or maybe think a bit more strategically so I can get 2 extra hours. And prioritizing him and all that he needs as far as presence and all this has incredible discomfort attached to it, right? It's inconvenient to make these adjustments when the business landscape requires time, requires input, requires all this energy. And it's got the highest ROI. Like it like a concert has so much joy attached to it. There's difficult moments for sure. But in order to have a life where you can do both, because I want to have it all, right? I want to be with him. I want to make a killing at business. I want to enjoy business. I want to go travel. I want to see the world. I want all of it. In order to do that, I have to make different decisions with my money, with my business, with my time. And for a guy that has not only fun wrapped in it, really high presence with wife and kids, how did you go about building business so that you could prioritize that more? Like what kind of discomforts did you have to go through? Was it systems, structure, hiring different? How did you map that?
I might surprise you a little bit with what I'm about to say. And that is, if there is one demographic of someone that I think maybe should not lean into my advice, my book, my thoughts, it's someone that's like on the younger side, because I think that the majority of what I have in my life right now, a lot of the great stuff, a lot of the relationships that I have with my wife, with my kids, the friends I have, really are directly or indirectly related to the fact that I was working 80 hours a week for most of my 20s. Okay. And so I think that there's nothing better to do with your time at that point. I mean, I was, single for the first half of that decade, and I learned so much and was able to gain so much future flexibility by banking the experience and the money that I was able to earn at that time. And so I think too, like, I was not as present in the life of my kids when they were like 2, 3, 4, 5 years old as I am now. I did that very intentionally. I don't have really any regrets around that because, we had great childcare. We had a great system for, they didn't need me as much. They were more like kind of doing like their thing. And so I tell a lot of younger fathers who have younger kids, for me, I am glad that I worked a little bit harder and was around a little bit less when they were younger because of how much time I'm able to spend with them now that they're older.
So that was a long game strategy, right? That's not easy for everyone to do. I think a lot of people are playing the short game, and even the entire theme of your book is sort of play the long game. Like, you can play the long game with work, you can play the long game with money. How did you get out of the hustle, scarcity, play now? Because I think the challenge with the world right now is everything is so fast that the long game seems inconvenient, uncomfortable, or completely out of radar. Like, you've got not only a philosophy, but based on everything I've researched and studied, like, you've been playing the long game a long time.
Well, it's interesting that you say that because I do think, I mentioned one of my favorite quotes and mantras in the book, and that is, I try to live my life like I'm going to live another 100 years and like I am going to die tomorrow at the same time. So I do believe in the long game a little bit, and the idea of retirement is one of the, if not the most, like long game type of concepts that people are getting behind, and I'm challenging that and saying that I think it's a really bad idea. I mentioned one of the things I talk about in the book are these, like, the time machine effect, where my kids were 10 and 7, and my wife and I had this nighttime routine where we would alternate lying in bed with our boys, saying a prayer, reading a story, tucking them in, lying with them. Started to find myself on a lot of nights, like, wishing it would hurry up. I'm thinking to myself, gosh, hurry up and fall asleep so I can get back out and watch a show, hang out with my wife, respond to this email. And then I got shook one night. Like, my oldest one is not going to want to do this very much longer. Like, I'm going to miss this. I need to lean into it here. And I tried to do that, and willpower worked a little bit. But one night I just had this this map come into play for me. And that was 20, 30 years from now, when my kids are 30, 40 years old. If there's a company that invents a time machine, and they are giving me the opportunity to go back in time for one night, like one nighttime snuggle with the 10-year-old version of my kid, how much money would I pay for that? And I just said $50,000. I would write a check for $50,000 without thinking twice about it to do it once. And even though, like, I'm not doing this with my kids anymore, they're 15 and 13 now, there's a lot of other $50,000 moments that are happening for me. There's a lot of $50,000 moments I know that are happening for you, for all the people that are listening to this. And so there's a bit of a long game, but there's also a bit of an urgency. There's also a little bit of me feeling like I am in the regret minimization game. And a big part of what I'm trying to do is share a message and share ideas with people so they don't wake up 15 years from now in a puddle of tears because they could have done things a lot differently than they did.
Those $50,000 moments I definitely get. It's taken a lot. My journey of fatherhood has been a rather difficult one, and it's real. I definitely get it, man. My son loves to be up on my shoulders. And every time, like, especially right now, he just turned 3. Every time he gets up, I'm like, man, not only is this really special, but I don't know when this is going to end. So I really need to, like, embrace this, even if my back hurts or my shoulders are burning. There's something really special about that. I find that it can be challenging to prioritize those, not because we're not aware of them. Like, I think a lot of dads are aware of those things, right? Like, this is fleeting, or this is important, or I want to be present. But I also find, and I think this has been through coaching a lot of CEOs, that the tension is, how the heck do I make this work, make this business happen, and make these moments? And I wonder if you have any advice for someone that is caught in the tension. Like, maybe they're there, but when they're at home, they're thinking about work, and when they're at work, they're thinking about home, and it becomes visible to them that this is a $50,000 moment, but their mind is just wrapped up in this. Like, how do you make sure you're present for those?
Look, in my experience, the tension is almost always money related, and the majority of people have no idea just how much more money and more time they have once they realize and decide that they'll probably work longer than society is telling them they have to work. And so I'll share an example with you that I share in my book. I call it A Tale of Two Tonys, about a 45-year-old guy who is making $150,000 a year and he has $150,000 saved up for retirement. And he meets with his financial advisor, and the financial advisor tells him, do you want to retire at 65? That's the age everyone else is going to retire. And he says, sure, because he hasn't given it much thought. The financial advisor tells him that in order to make that happen, he has to save $2,400 a month every single month and adjust it for inflation for the next 20 years in order to stop working. And that's about 20% of what he's making. That's $30,000 a year. And he's making 150. It's a non-starter for most people. It means that they're having to save almost as much as they're spending right now once you back out taxes. So then I talk about, there's an old movie called Sliding Doors with Gwyneth Paltrow, and it shows this hypothetical, these two parallel universes, one where she catches a train and one where she doesn't catch a train, and the impact that it has on her life. So I have this Sliding Doors alternate universe where Tony's wife, before he meets with the financial advisor again, says, are you sure you're going to stop working at 65? I mean, you kind of like what you do. You like the people that you work with. And even if you're not doing that, I can't imagine you sitting around and doing nothing for 30 years. I can't, you're going to work until at least you're 75 years old. And so he calls the advisor back and says, can you just change that number to 75? So here's the crazy thing, man. Like, the amount of money that Tony has to save on a monthly basis goes from $2,400 a month to stop working at 65 down to $110 a month if he wants to work until he's 75. It's a 96% reduction in what he has to save. Tony has $2,200 a month now that he didn't know he had 5 minutes ago. And even if Tony were to say, I'll work until I'm 70 instead of 75, the amount goes down to $600. It goes down by 75%. And we've all seen these articles about how we should have saved more when we were 22 years old to take advantage of compounding interest. And if you're like me, you didn't do as good of a job of that, you feel dumb. But even if we did it, it's not like we were making, hopefully we weren't making nearly as much then as we are now. No one is writing articles talking about how we can achieve the same thing, except like magnitudes more, by letting it sit in there for an extra 5 or 10 years. And so, like, when I'm spending time with my kids, when I'm focused on these $50,000 moments, and right now, as with a 15 and a 13-year-old who are going to probably be gone in 3 and 5 years respectively, I am working nowhere near as hard as I'm capable of working. Like, I could have more stuff, I could have more cars, I could have more watches, I could have all of it. But for me, flexibility is the flex. I don't do much during my afternoons. I'm around to hang out with my kids. I take them fishing. We work out together. We do all kinds of things. And a lot of this is sponsored by the knowing that in 5 years, sign me up for like 50, 60-hour weeks again. I know that I'm going to be ready to contribute. I know I'm going to have wisdom to share. And I know that people are probably going to be willing to pay me for it. And that allows me to really lean into this time with them right now.
Flipping brilliant, man. I really like the idea that you're coming back to work, that that, right? That you're open and can kind of track for that. And man, what a powerful idea that most of the president's problems are about money. I think that's really, really clutch.
Like, everyone knows they should spend more time with their wife or their significant other and hang out with their kids more and work out more. And everyone knows all of this, but no one is telling them, like reassuring them that they're going to be able to pay their mortgage 6 months from now, right? And so hopefully I'm through sharing this story and other stories that I tell in my book, hopefully I'm like solving the money problem for them a little bit, because again, like, people are not going to be happy just sitting around doing nothing. And if you hate your job, I'm sure the idea of doing nothing, and you're probably right, like it's going to make you feel better than doing something, but it's not unlocking infinite happiness for you, right? Like, I think that finding some work, and I also don't think that you have to love it. I don't think it has to be your calling or your purpose. Like, I think that there are other things that you can do to live a fulfilling life besides like finding work that is like your reason for being here. But again, like, I don't want you to hate it, but find work that doesn't suck your soul. Find work that you like some elements of it, and it provides you with the money and the flexibility to be able to live out your passions in other areas of your life.
Yeah, there's an obtuse amount of pressure on work to be like everything. there's a ton of studies I've read on this too, that, for even for an employee, that if I go to work and I expect work to be my village, my friends, my camaraderie, my safety, my therapy, my job, my money, like it's a lot of pressure on the work environment that has notable consequences. But I also would mirror that for a lot of entrepreneurs, they kind of expect the same thing, that work is supposed to be this, magical place that just solves all these issues. Underneath it, what I've found very helpful for me is to like structure these things in the same way I would structure like business reviews or team huddles or those kinds of events. I structure the same thing in with workouts, with health, with adventure, with travel, with my key relationships, and even self-care. And it can be easy to let the money game ruin enjoying the game. Yeah, I think entrepreneurship is a beautiful instrument, because you can make a lifestyle, and ideally you make a lifestyle that you love. The illusion for a lot of entrepreneurs, though, is I want to live this fantasy of like no responsibility, no commitments, no time, no structure, no shape. Like I don't want to set alarms. And I find it to be like a little bit childish to want that, right? And I'm going to explain it this way, then I want to hear your take. If I said to anyone else, any adult, like my parents, for example, who were born in like the late 40s and 50s, if I said, I don't want to work, I don't want responsibilities, I don't want to have to be anywhere, and I don't want to be around people I don't like, they would be like, dude, what the hell are you talking about? Like the only person that gets that kind of life is a child, right? An infant. And I understand the intent. I understand the goal is like, I want to work so hard that I escape. But then I think there's this entrepreneurial crisis beyond the exit, beyond the sale, beyond the collapse of whatever you're trying to build, where then you have to build a life that does feel good. And then you're left with the same problem that you're avoiding now, where the discomfort comes in is I think entrepreneurs could benefit from what's my process for self-care? What's my process for connection? What's my process for health? And build it into their business. And I think where that might align with your philosophy is that if I took my time horizon for like, I want to sell my business in 5 years or 10 years, let's say 10. And I said, all right, I'm just going to crank out 80-hour work weeks for 10 years. And if I took that timeline and said, okay, let me make it 20 years, similar to changing the retirement age, I now have the time to spend with my kids, to take care of my health, to go work out. Like it opens up this valve for like, I love this. I could do this forever. What's your take on A, the philosophy of like exiting for freedom, and then B, how to maybe weave this into running a business?
Yeah, like, so we could go a couple of different ways with this. And I would say that like one of them, is, in my experience, especially when it comes to parenting kids who are older, I can't fit them into my schedule, right? So I would say 3 or 4 years ago, my oldest, so he was probably 12 at the time, around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, he said, Dad, can we play Legos together? And I was getting ready to work out. And I was like, oh, sorry, bud, I'm getting ready to work out and go to the gym right now. And as I'm working out, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, man, I don't want to ever have to say that again. And I know a lot of parents who will say to me, like I came home early from work. I was home at 4:30 and I wanted to spend time with them, but they didn't want to spend time with me and I don't know what to do. And it's like, well, you can't put your kid into your calendar, in my experience. And so for me, it was, I'm going to rearrange my days to make sure that I get done everything that absolutely has to be done earlier in the day. And then I'm going to have everything else that would be nice to do, but isn't a must do for later in the day. So that if my kids say they want to hang out with me and spend time with me, then I'm not missing out on anything. But a lot of days I know that they're not going to, and I can get that work done. But then the more I would say yes, the more they would want to hang out with me even more. And so I do think that yes, I schedule date nights with my wife, and I do think that there is like a danger of you get so good at your job and your work and what you're doing for people that it's a lot easier to just keep leaning into that than it is to these other areas of your life where you don't necessarily feel as good or you're not praised as much. But yeah, like I think it's like you might find as your kid gets older, that just putting him in the calendar from 4 to 5 just might not get it done. So I do think that like having the flexibility to sort of like go in different directions. And, like I spent one day last week, I drove, my kid got into fishing. I'm not into fishing. I wish he would have picked something else. I wish he would just have gone to like the park, 3 minutes away from here to kick the soccer ball around with his friends. But he's like, I want to go fishing. So I'm driving him around and he's walking. He's got to drop a pin. I go to pick him up. He's like, oh, we found a better spot to fish. I don't want to come home yet. So I drive back. And like, I mean, what a privilege, man. Like, because again, he's going to be gone in 5 years. And so I'm just really glad that I get to like be the one that's able to do that for him and his friends.
Yeah, Emerson does not care about my schedule. Like, not at all. There's no chance he cares. Obviously, he's young, but I love that. Yeah, can't fit him into the calendar. Good. I think that's good advice, and I also I really want to hear a little bit more about this like discomfort. I do think that men in particular like going to work because we get a sense of significance, we get a sense of accomplishment. There's like a lot that comes to work, and then we go home and if I'm spending time with Emerson, he doesn't care about any of this stuff. He really don't, and as much as I might want to steer back into work, and I'll say, dude, I hear it all the time. Like, I'm doing it for the family, right? I'm doing it for the family. The reality is it's really uncomfortable for me to sit and like watch him roll a play car down a ramp 360 times. It's uncomfortable to prioritize health. It's uncomfortable to do the non-work things. Why do you think that is? Is that just because work provides so much, or is it because we weren't taught to do that?
So look, I think just to piggyback on what I was sharing earlier, I'd tell a story about someone that I know who's in their 70s, and he said to me a couple years ago, he said that, "Do you have any advice for me?" Like, I'd go home, and this guy's a therapist. He's like, I go home and my wife tells me that I'm a bad husband, and she wants me to come home earlier. Like, what do you think? And I was like, I think she's right. And I think that the reason why it's so hard for you is because you've built a thriving business, multiple thriving businesses. And when you go into the office, everyone thinks you're amazing, right? Like, you are the man, your employees love you, your clients love you, you're making incredible impact on the world. And so where would you rather spend your time, right? Would you rather like spend your time going into an environment where everybody's praising you and saying you're the man, or would you rather go and be with people who are telling you you're insignificant, right? Or that you're not, not showing up the way that they would like you to show up. And I think that that's a real problem for a lot of people. And I think that there needs to be some balance. I think that there needs to be some uncomfortableness in order to deal with it. Look, when I sold my wealth management practice a couple years ago, I benefited a lot by unwinding a lot of the habits that that had been driving me for a really long time in my personal life. Like switching gears just a little bit. I've spent over $250,000 on couples therapy for my wife and me, for us to be able to improve our relationship, learn how to communicate better. Like, I don't want to know, even though I kind of do know, what that would be worth right now, if I was putting it into an investment account instead of writing checks to therapists. But like, where it leaves me right now is it leaves me at 48, more in love with my wife today than I've ever been. It leaves me with like an incredible partnership. It leaves me creating from a place of not having like the stress or the trauma or any issues with my significant other that I see a lot of other people have right now. And so yeah, it can be uncomfortable, but I think that like the more that you do it and the more you lean into it, it's uncomfortable to go to the gym if you haven't been to the gym in a while. But I don't know about you, but it's not when I'm in my, like, when I'm going 4 to 5 days a week, it's not uncomfortable to go if I've been going 4 to 5 days a week for multiple years at a time.
Yeah. There's like a story that changes, right? When you go the first time, like I hate being a beginner. Like, I absolutely despise being a newbie. And it doesn't matter what it is. Like, dude, I went to jujitsu and was learning, and then we had to roll, and I got crushed. Like, I got embarrassed. And I think that's maybe the feeling that I would attribute to anything new. Like, I feel embarrassed. And so I love this idea that anything that's uncomfortable when you first start it is going to feel that way. And I'd love to know what the story is about what you're actually investing in. Because whether it's couples therapy or it's the gym or it's even vacation and travel can be this way, right? It's like, oh man, that $250, that's a lot of money. Or it could be $6,000 to go to Greece. That's a lot of money. And we're fixated on money. So what's
Or it could be 3 or 4 million for a divorce.
zing? Yeah. How do you evaluate things that many people may shy away from, things like vacations and fun and play and these things? Like, are you looking at the outcome? Are you looking at how it improves, like, your day to day? Are you discounting money? Are they all factored in? How do you make those equations?
I think that the best person for any of us to be getting advice from is the highest and most optimized version of ourselves. And I think that the majority of people are a long ways away from that. The majority of people, because of the amount of stress, anxiety, brain fog, lack of energy that they have in their life, are extremely unqualified to be making important decisions for themselves or the people around them. And so for me, the first place that I would encourage people to start is sleep. Okay. That if there are people out there that feel like they need to work really hard, like I just saw, like Alex Hormozy just had his big book launch, which I'm sure you saw. And this guy like constantly brags about sleeping like 5 hours a night, and he's an animal, man. He's great, and I think that like he's doing a lot of really wonderful things for a lot of people. But 5 hours of sleep works when you're in your like 30s. I think you can get away with it. I got away with it for sure. I can't do it now. I can't do it at 48. And so for me, like I was a glass or two of wine a night for probably 20 years. I rarely got drunk, but I like had a glass of wine and was every single night. And I would wake up the next day and it was either I'd feel okay, my body got used to it, like it was fine. Over the last couple of years, I dialed in my sleep, man, and I sleep better than 99% of people on the planet. And the way that I feel when I wake up most mornings now, like I didn't know that that feeling was on the menu a couple of years ago. I don't think most people know that it's on the menu. And so there's a lot of things like sleeping, working out, dieting that our society, I think, focuses too much on the long-term benefits, the long game of these things, and why it's good for you to sleep and eat well now, and how it's going to benefit you 20 years from now. And there's not enough people talking about like why you should do these things because of how you're going to feel 20 hours from now. Um, yeah, like if I sleep great tonight, then I'm going to wake up tomorrow and I'm going to make better choices at 9 o'clock in the morning. Those better choices at 9 o'clock in the morning lead to better choices at 11 o'clock. And those choices lead to me eating a salad for lunch instead of a cheeseburger. And having a salad for lunch instead of a cheeseburger increases the likelihood that I'm going to not skip my workout at 3 o'clock, right? And then so you just do this for like a couple of weeks, right? And all of a sudden, like I think you're much more qualified to identify, should I be spending more time with my significant other? Do I need to spend more time with my kids? Do I need to take better care of myself? Do we need therapy? Like fill in the blank, because I list a lot of things, and there's a lot that we haven't even talked about for ways people can spend their time and their money differently. And I'm not here to say that like one is better than the other. I think, and they can all change over time too. I'm here to say, like, let's just stop exclusively thinking about just the money part of this whole experience, and let's think about our relationships, our health, and a lot of the areas that we've covered so far.
Yeah, it is very easy to let the money dictate what you put your time into and your energy. So I love that. What do you do to reflect? Like I hear in the way that you're going about your life and your business and the way that you've even put this book together is incredibly intentional. And I'm sure there has to be a degree of zooming out to like reestablish these things, right? The idea of even looking at sleep and assessing your relationships and talking about where you and your wife are and looking at what your kids are doing and being able to be like, dude, I'll drive you to the pond, versus getting caught up in the frustration of it requires zooming out. So what do you do to zoom out? How do you maintain your connection to your vision and where you're going in life, and make sure you don't get lost with your head down?
Look, I think that money matters here, right? And I think that, we've seen studies that suggest that money leads to more happiness up to a certain point. And the studies typically say that it's anything over like $125,000. Up to that, it will increase your happiness after that. I think that those studies are wrong. I think that like, at least the way that I have lived my life and the way I've seen other people live their lives, I think that having a couple $1,000,000 in the bank account leads to more happiness and makes life a little easier. And at the end of the day, I won the game that most people are playing. I didn't win it to the extent that everyone won it, but I knew that I could win it by having just a certain amount, right? And that having a certain amount would then free me up to say, I get to opt out of this game and I get to decide what other game I want to play instead if I don't want to keep playing this game. And so I don't think that like financial independence and the how much money do you need to never have to work again is kind of outdated and unnecessary. But I think how much money do I need so that I can take my foot off the gas for a few months or a few years and reevaluate what I'm doing. And for me, like I gave up a lot of my addictions, like I told you, I wasn't an alcoholic, but I was addicted to being able to have a glass of wine to relax at the end of the day. I was addicted to nicotine for 25 years. I needed it in order to focus, right? And so I said, I want to put myself in a position where I don't need anything or need anyone in order to feel a certain way. I started meditating more. One day during one of my meditations, I was thinking back to like, I was in the 7th grade. I was at a new school. I don't know exactly what happened that allowed a situation to pop up where I had an entire classroom of kids chanting, "Who do we hate? We hate Derek." And then was in the principal's office, with my parents and the therapist, and they were telling me that I wasn't going to be successful because I wasn't getting good grades and I had ADD, and we've all heard this story before, or that I wasn't going to get any of the girls to like me. And here I am, like, like I proved them all wrong. My life became like this, you don't think I can do it. Watch me. I think, Nathan Barry said recently, that entrepreneurs like trauma is fuel for them, right? It's like a lot of us have experienced something that gives us the drive that we need to succeed and kind of keep going. And so for me, I was like, I don't need to prove myself to anybody anymore, but I've got this energy. My body's addicted to this because it was doing it for so long, and I'm waking up most mornings. And it's like, okay, who are we going to prove wrong today? Because whenever we get into that mode, look at all the amazing stuff that happens. Like you got the amazing wife, you got the amazing kids, you got the business, you got the money, you got more friends than most adults that you know. But like, gosh, this is exhausting. Feeling like I have to like start trouble with people in order to like, be inspired or motivated to like do stuff. And so that's been a process of unwinding. And look, so part of it again, like I could have a lot more money than I have right now, but part of what I've decided is I wanted to take time to reflect, and I wanted to really kind of step back to say how can I design and continue to create a life that suits me now, not necessarily like what worked for me for the past 30 years.
What do you say to the guy that is feeling caught up in the game and wants out, but can't? He's just disoriented. How do you help him get back on track with most of what's here, right? Choosing how you work and taking meaningful moments, finding your $50,000 moments. How do you steer him back to this idea that there's another way?
One thing that I think about a lot is it possible to opt out of the game that everyone's playing without winning that game first? Because at least the way that I did it, right? The way that I did it, I quit everything. I had a full blown midlife crisis. Like I had marital trouble for the first time in 15 years. I was like yelling at my kids more than usual. And look, this was all on the heels of COVID, my father passing away, me selling a business. I mean, I was ripe, for this, right? But also, I'm not sure. I'm pretty confident that like a single dad that had a 9 to 6 job, or an entrepreneur that has payroll to make next month is not going to be able to take the same approach that I took, right? And take the time to step back and step away. But I would just double click on what I shared earlier, just about the sleep and the fun. And like, I think that it's a flywheel effect where a lot of us feel like we don't have time to invest in our relationships, our health, our happiness, because we don't have time. But in my experience, and there's a lot of data to back this up, when you make time for those things, even though you're actually spending less time working, the time that you are working, you're much more productive, you're much more creative than you would be if you were just grinding it out all the time.
Yes. Having a 3-year-old and prioritizing time with him has made me so much better in business. In fact, I had a guy tell me when he learned that I was going to be a dad, he's like, Aaron, you're going to unlock a whole new level. Because, assuming that you make change, right? Because I know not everyone does, but if you really lock in, man, it makes those minutes much more valuable.
Sir, no doubt, man.
So let's end with this. There's also this piece of running a business and winning and exiting that I want to hone in on real fast. The idea that when you win the game, you would essentially engage differently, that you would rewrite the rules and play the game differently. If you had to speak to someone that was just about to exit his business, he knows it's coming, just on the final signing table, and he's worried that his whole identity is about to change, and that's a real thing. But he's like, there's a way for me to run this and play this game differently now. What 3 pieces of advice would you give to that guy?
Number one would just be that the best place for him to get advice is himself. And to, to take a look at what's important to him, which relationships are important. I would say I've got something in my book called the alignment audit, and it's 3 questions that I typically have asked my clients, and I shared with all the readers of my book as well, that allow people to determine just how much they are living their life in alignment with what's important to them. And question number 1 is, if you were to win $50 million in the lottery tomorrow, how would your life change? Okay. And so for somebody that's getting ready to sell a business, whatever that dollar amount is, they can just say, how would my life change if I got this money? Question number 2 is, if a doctor told you that you had 1 year left to live, what would you do over the next year? And question number 3 is, if the doctor told you that you were actually going to die tomorrow, what would be your biggest regret? So those are a couple of questions that I think, whether you're getting ready to sell your business or not, but I think especially if you are close to having some type of a financial event, it can be even more impactful. You can just sit with those questions to just really help you figure out, like, what are the good next steps for me now?
Man, I love those. All 3 of those hit home for me in what I do and what I believe in. You got to have all 3 too, because if you only do one of them, then you get kind of lopsided.
I met this. Maybe I'll tell a quick story. We started with concerts, and we can end with a concert. So I went to a concert a couple months ago. I took my sons. My wife was at a women's retreat, and we ended up in a suite. And I started talking to this guy. He was being super nice to my boys, and I could just tell that this guy was really successful. And we started talking. We're at this. It's a concert. It's a festival, but the band we were seeing is called Goose. And he said to me that he was the CEO, was a CEO and founder of a 9-figure construction company. And he was working hard, and he was having a hard time pulling away, but knew he was working hard, and his kids were getting a little bit older, and he knew he wanted to spend more time with them. And he saw Led Zeppelin and the Grateful Dead 5 times each in the 70s. And he said it was life-changing for him. And of course, both those bands stopped, touring pretty soon after that. He said he spent the next 30 years of his life chasing that feeling. And he finally got it back when he saw Goose 4 years ago. And seeing Goose and getting that feeling back again was the inspiration that he needed to go out and find a CEO to hire to come in and run his company, so that he could take a step back to spend more time with his kids and to take in live music again. And so he's seen Goose over 50 times in the past 4 years, and got to spend all this wonderful time with his kids as they were getting older. And I thought that was a pretty cool story, where sometimes we just need, maybe people don't feel like they should be having more fun, because the kind of fun that they're having really isn't that much fun to begin with, and that they can explore leaning into other relationships, other modalities, and that might give them the kick in the butt they need to make some changes to their business and the way that they're doing things.
Man, what a beautiful send off too. Sounds like everybody here, your job is to go on whatever local venue you have near you and book some concert tickets. Sounds like we're making that happen.
There's an app called Bands in Town that will sync with your Spotify account, and based on who you listen to, it'll let you know if those actual artists or similar artists are coming to town. And I think stand-up comedy can be even easier, because then you don't have to necessarily have a preference for like a certain, like if you like, indie rock, then you might not want to go to like a rap or a country, concert. But stand-up comedy, I don't think it's as important to know about the person before you go as it is for like live music.
Well said. Okay. So my homework is find a concert and find some comedy. I can remember those. Derek, this is great, man. I got a lot out of this. I hope you listening did too. Where can people find you? Where's the best place to pick up the book? And how can people stay tuned to your journey?
Hey, man. DerekCoburn.com is my website. And there you can click to different places that will sell my book. And if you send me like proof of purchase, my CRM will send you off a workbook that I put together, which I think would be helpful. We didn't cover much of my book at all today. And I thought this conversation was amazing. I don't have any regrets, but I'm also proud of the fact that I wrote a book that it's really hard to squeeze, a lot of it into just like an hour or 2-hour conversation. I'm on Instagram at Cadre DC and LinkedIn are the two places that I'm spending a lot of time online. And I don't really have anything to sell right now. It just feels like I'm in a spot where I'm able to like give back. I'm able to provide some wisdom and some advice as to what's worked for me. And just looking to like, do what I can to build community and help people out. And like I would say the only other thing too is like my wife and I, we didn't talk about it much, but we run an organization called Cadre for entrepreneurs and CEOs that has like a lot of really amazing people. And we got really good at figuring out how to provide life-changing introductions to great content and great people. So I think going forward in this age of AI, that connecting with the right people, having the right conversations is going to become even more important. So I would encourage people to go out, like find groups, by them or conferences that they can attend to, get those connections and have those relationships that are also going to, I think, level them up quite a bit. In addition to some of the other things that we talked about.
Yeah, I'm 100% behind that. I would encourage you all to check out Cadre for sure and pick up Derek's book. I think if I think back to books that have changed my life the most, they usually have this kind of theme, this change course, think different, shift perspective mentality that Derek presents incredibly well and structures really well through the book. Much of what I wanted today to be about is maybe the catalyst for you to take a deeper dive. And if you have the opportunity to send him a snapshot of your purchase and get a workbook, it's going to be good. So check that out. Check out his website. I'd encourage you to follow along what he's doing. And Derek, I'm sure when you like step back in the scene in a couple of years, it's going to be a home run. Like I just can't wait for that.
Yeah, and I'm still in the scene. I've got 1 foot, 1 foot out the door, but 1 foot in the door still. So I'm around. I'm just like I'm not saying yes to every speaking gig. I'm not like banging out content like as often as maybe other people are. But and in fact, I would say that one of the main reasons why I decided to like write the book was I wanted my kids to see me working and doing something, hopefully big and impactful, because they were largely, reaping the benefits of a lot of my work and efforts without having seen it before. So I'm in the game, but I'm just very integrated right now, and just really enjoying all the different aspects of life as they all come together pretty well. And loved our chat, Aaron. Loved being here with you, and big fan of all you're doing in the world.
Integration is one of my favorite themes. So if you're trying to get more integrated, which I think a lot of leaders should be more oriented towards, definitely check out Derek's book. He's got a lot to offer, and I know that book is going to change the way you run your business, you plan your vacations, and you engage in fun. Derek, thanks for being here. We'll see you on the next one.
Thanks, brother.